What's going on, guys? Welcome to The Journey, where we deep dive all things real estate and investing. We pick the brains of market leaders in their field so that we can fast forward you from where you are to where you want to be, utilizing their knowledge and experience. My name is Austin Mitchell, and on today's episode, I have joining me Joseph Snyder. I'm super excited about this one because Joe is HomeSnap's fastest growing agent in 2022, but he's been financially free. He is financially free by the age of 28. So there's a lot of value here today. He's been in real estate for 7 years, and he's been able to amass 7 doors, but leases 11. So that's going to be the main topic for today. How can we maximize our profit and rent utilizing the portfolio we have right now? And so he's kind of systematized the model that he has a rent per room. And so we're going to dive into that. Joe is also pretty much a natural entrepreneur. Since the minute I met him, this man got his hands into a dozen different things. He sold the vending machine to me at the gym. That was a quick endeavor for him. And he's been looking into short-term rentals in New Orleans. He's got long-term rentals here in Norfolk. So he's got a little bit of everything going on. But I'm excited to dive in today on this. So Joe, would you please just run me through how did you get started into investing?
All right. What's up, guys? All right. So I got started in real estate investing while I was in the military. So my mom, she had passed away and she left me a small inheritance. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to have the money just sitting in my account. So I started to do some research, and I ended up listening to Grant Cardone, and he was talking about having multiple doors and all this good stuff, and his energy was infectious. If you haven't heard it, Grant Cardone, you should look him up. He's a great guy. And it was between that and doing an app, and I had a buddy that did an app and spent like $20K on it, and it didn't work. And most of the time they don't work, and they say unless you know how to build an app yourself, you shouldn't just invest in an app. Mm-hmm. Unless you have a lot of money. Yeah. So I decided to go with real estate because I saw it as a safer option and it made sense to me. And my goal is ultimately to be my own boss and be financially free. So I started looking, and I found, I was in the military, so I had a VA loan. And I started talking to the bank. That's usually step one. Step one, talk to a realtor, then talk to the bank. And then got that pre-approval and bought a house that was way too expensive for someone who was my rank, and everyone at work was not going to allow it. So I actually had to keep it a secret because in the military, sometimes your higher ups will try to jump into your decision-making processes, and I just believed in my own knowledge and believed in myself, so I made the decision without letting anyone know.
I think that's powerful because there's a lot to unwrap there. So his first deal was on a VA. So again, being in Norfolk, I hear this story on a daily, using your VA to buy a property, a multifamily, to then try to house hack it. Did you rent it out? Obviously the other side.
Yeah, so I moved in and I brought some buddies in right away because house hacking is always a benefit, whether you get a single family or multifamily. Just filling the rooms up and charging your buddies $600 for rent will help with the mortgage. It was a duplex, so the bottom actually came with a tenant. So I was planning on, this is not smart, but I was planning on putting my friends down there as well. But in a business setting, get the rent roll, which is where someone's already in there, you buy the property and keep the rent going to you.
Very well said. And it's funny because before we started this, he was actually telling me that duplex that he bought, he was I didn't analyze it. I just knew it was in a good neighborhood. And so he pulled the trigger and pursued it. And it actually took a little while. What was that, 6-8 months before? Because you started that in 2017 and then closed it 2018?
Yeah, I closed in January 2018. And
okay.
Then, but the renovations for it took about 8 months, honestly. Because I bought it and I knew the location was good. It's off of Colley Avenue, if this is people in Norfolk, right off of Harrington. So great location, but I bought it without knowing a lot about real estate, and a lot of the issues in the house just weren't even livable. There was cracks all over the walls, and there was some water damage. The siding was falling off, but I was I still want it. Let's do it. So it took me about a year to do the renovations. But afterwards, it paid out well.
How did you get the VA to?
The VA, well, it was approvable that the VA would say it was okay. So it wasn't. When I say not livable, I shouldn't exaggerate so hard.
Yeah.
You could live in it.
It was distressed, but not livable.
You could live in it, but I moved my friends in, and actually they ran away. They lived in there for a week, and then after a week, the dude's just outside, just rubbing his head, and he just like he's like can't live here anymore. And that's when I realized like, oh, like you can't just buy any house. You can, but you have to realize like what is this journey gonna look like, and then just make sure it's in the stress level that you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So
essentially, like if you're thinking about doing it, Joe has the mindset of just jump in and figure it out afterwards, because obviously none of that was new. But like this is living proof that he's now at 7 doors, has 11 leases, and the first one was literally not knowing anything. Okay, didn't analyze it. Just the only thing he went off of was that it was in a good neighborhood, and that was the bet. And so you can always probably take that to the bank, and it'll turn out well as long as you put your effort in. So obviously he turned around and renovated it for 12 months, and now it's one of your best producers.
Yeah, that has been my anchor point, honestly. So that's what I'm thinking. Like when I talk to clients and stuff, I want to push them in a direction of, skirting the edge of your stress zone, because houses are expensive, but not going over the top where you are scared that you're going to go bankrupt or foreclose, but not too low that you live in the ghetto or something and your house doesn't appreciate that well. So the reason why I say that is because with my house, it appreciated so well that I was able to pull money out and buy another duplex with the money. So
awesome. And so he was kind of able to roll that into the next property. But I mean, just speaking on the neighborhoods, obviously you're a real estate agent, and bad neighborhoods will never appreciate as good neighborhoods.
No.
So there is value in that. Like obviously we're all looking for like that good deal. What's a good deal? What's a good deal? But it does, if you can find an honest price, a fair price in a good neighborhood, that's going to outperform a good price in a bad neighborhood any day, because the appreciation just isn't going to be there. The resale values aren't going to be there. The quality of tenants aren't going to be there. And so putting in a little bit more on the front end to get into a good neighborhood is obviously panned out well for you.
Yeah, I would say in general, it's not only, because if you get a house in general, it's going to be a win no matter what. It's an asset, so I mean, you're going to win. But if you can afford something more expensive, I think you should go with the more expensive option. Just make sure you run the numbers, which we can help you out if you get a hold of us at any point.
Yeah, for sure. And so now we've got the duplex. You were able to cash out refi? Is that what you did?
Yeah, that was years later. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
and then that's how you bought the next one. So now how did you scale up to 7?
So the next one, I didn't buy it with the cash out until like the pandemic hit and everything went crazy. That's when I pulled it out. But in the meantime, between those two purchases, the next house I used the VA loan again. So if you're in the military, you have a lot of entitlement, and if you didn't use all of it the first time, you just got to wait a certain period of time. You need to have the intention of living in the house for a year. But let's say that something might happen to you for some reason, like let's say, you need to live there for a year, but there are circumstances that can change that if it's really affecting your life, and you can move if you have to. For me, I was there for over a year, and then I bought a house by ODU, by the university. So that was about 2 miles down the road, and used the VA loan on that. That was a clean one, a clean buy and everything. Just had to do a mild renovation. I think renovations were around $20,000.
Did you take out a loan for that, or you had that in cash?
No, I used, so sometimes, if you don't have cash on you, if you are smart and savvy with your money, you can ultimately do this. I did, it's worked for me so far, but using credit cards to buy materials and fix your house. You just have to be conscious. Like, am I going out and partying and stuff? No. Like, anything that I use my card for is going to be for the business.
So to backtrack that, and going into how to purchase, like the VA. So like I'm still stuck on the VA, and again, being a military town, most of the people here are military, and to me there's really no reason, because I just found out just today that you can partner up with a buddy also in the military, and y'all could split your what is that term called? The entitlement. You can split your entitlement, and y'all can go in on an investment property, so y'all can split it. The rules are, don't quote me, but it's like 78,000 and below you have to be in order to do that or qualify for. So the other thing is the closing costs. So the VHDA VA is a program that allows you to actually roll the closing cost into the loan, so that you don't have to come up with, I think, more than 1%. again, I'm not a lender, but these are things that I've been hearing and I've encountered with clients that I've been in touch with. So there are options out there is what I'm saying. There are programs available, especially VA if you're military, to get into a house with almost zero money down and start, paying down a mortgage instead of paying rent, especially if you're trying to get into the investment game. So I would highly recommend that. Just message me if you have questions on that. But now I want to dig into, when did you decide I want to rent per room? To maximize your profit.
So much later after jumping from the VA to another property and then getting the duplex, then I was in a position where I didn't have the money for a down payment, but I had some money. I had about 15 grand, and I was like, okay, well, what can I do with 15 grand in real estate? And I stumbled upon rental arbitrage, which is where it's pretty popular right now. Is where you flip beds on Airbnb. Essentially, you convince a landlord to rent their space to you as a corporate lease, and then you can do, it's primarily for short-term rentals, but I believe that subletting is literally you running a business. So you can pick it apart in three different ways. There's long-term rentals, there's short-term rentals, and then there's mid-term rentals. So you have your own approach, and basically went to New Orleans. I had an idea that I was going to go down there and get a short-term rental. That was not okay with them after looking more into the city regulations. And then I was in a coffee shop, and I overheard someone talking and saying they were a travel nurse. And I went ahead and did some research and found that it's like number 8 out of 20,000 cities. So there's a ton of travel nurses there, and they get paid really well too. Yeah. $3,500 a week, which is pretty incredible. Which hats off to them. They do a lot of hard work. So, but on the side, to keep going, I looked into that a little bit more, and I tried to kind of come up with a strategy on how I could make money doing the rental arbitrage without the short-term rental thing, because I don't believe in breaking the rules if you can avoid them. You don't want to pay fines and all that stuff. So I was talking to my brother, and we were talking. We're like, well, what if you got a real big house? Because a lot of big houses are hard to rent out. If you go on Zillow and you find a 6-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house, anything above 5 bedrooms are pretty tough to rent. They're sitting on there for a while. Mm-hmm. And then I looked into the square footage, and I looked into the location, and then I looked at the bathroom count, and I thought to myself, after looking at what rooms go for by the room, I thought, okay, I think I might be able to turn this into a midterm lodging house for nurses and then furnish it, which they typically want you to do when you do the short term, is just to furnish it. But this side, I was thinking, let's do midterm and then furnish it. Mm-hmm. And it's been stressful, but right now everything's booked out. And let's just put it this way, on a side note, when you're renting these bigger houses, you can actually negotiate with the landlord too, because no one's renting them. This house was $3,500, and I was like, would you guys want to do $3,000 for a corporate lease? And they were happy to do it. And then by being a realtor, I also got paid my finder's fee.
Nice. Paid the way.
Yeah, I got my finder's fee. Add that into the furniture. I think it was $600 or something, so that helps. And then we furnished it, and I think because of holidays, it was a little harder to rent out, but right now it's $1,000 a bedroom, and then the master is $1,200.
Mm. Yep. And it's got 5 bedrooms right now. It's fully rented.
Fully rented.
So that strategy right there obviously is working for Joe. So he went out, find a house that he found a massive house, 5 beds. Nobody's renting that for a side or a permanent residence. Mm-hmm. And so he went in, negotiated with the guy, and is now paying less. So this play is to come in and pay your long-term lease, but make the cash flow on the short-term or mid-term rentals, and then he keeps the difference in profit, thus making a business out of that. Yeah. So I think that's a great model, because you don't have to worry about upkeep. You don't have to worry about any of the overhead expenses on the property, correct?
I handle some of them, but any big stuff, let's say, for example, what did happen was, this is part of the stress of the whole thing, but this is before it was rented out. Someone ran the tub or something, one of the maintenance men, and then it actually started leaking in the kitchen. So I'm like, oh my God, this is stressful. Yeah. $3,000 due the end of the month, no one here, we got a leak in the kitchen. All right.
It's working out perfectly. Yeah. So okay.
But
so
they fixed it. Fixed it. And what else? They're wrapping the pipes out front of the house. You just make sure that when you get this lease written up, that you you delineate what you're actually going to do. Like if you're like, okay, we handle like changing the filters out, we handle a leaky sink, we won't tell you about that, we're good, we got it. Like for example, one of the tubs was not draining completely, but I took care of it. It was like $120. So
that's perfect. Yeah, so like the big stuff like the roof, changing out windows, and like wrapping the house, like you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, which is great because now that can help improve the cash flow. You just maintain the property while you're there. And then that leapfrogs to the bed bath count, because going back to what I was saying about with the VA, because I'm working with a client right now, just to kind of give y'all the shortcut on this market in this area. We initially went in because he wanted to do VA. We started with the duplex, was running the numbers, and we were getting numbers around cash flowing about $700 to $900. But ultimately, we've landed on a single family townhouse with 3 beds, 2 baths. Because the reason there is that the price point is going to be much lower, so about $225 to $235. That's going to be a much lower payment. With these interest rates, is about $1,500. But the beauty is that BAH now has gone up, or will be going up next month for the military, and so he's going to collect more. That'll cover the mortgage, and then he has 2 rooms now to rent out to his buddies, which is the big thing, because in the duplex, it's hard to rent out double rooms to multiple people unless they obviously know each other. So Joe has discovered how to do that, which we'll talk about. But I mean, like getting a stranger to rent out a 2-bed, 1-bath with another stranger is very hard. So the per room model like that, so you can only collect one rent from that other side of the duplex, and then he could split a room. So the way we were cash flowing maximally is get a lower price point and then 3-bed, 2-bath to allow maximum rent potential. So each one of those rooms is rented out. And that's kind of the model we're pursuing on all of our VA first-time investors trying to get into the door. So if you want to try that model does work. And then for you, how did you find people that wanted to rent per room?
There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
How'd you market it? Did you put it on like apartments.com?
Oh, okay. So one thing I definitely did was I hired a designer to design the spot, and then also had a professional photographer go out there, which my assistant is actually one of the tenants in the house. We formed a relationship where she's able to manage and do all this stuff, and she kind of privied me that apparently Airbnb does free pictures, so I could have saved money that way. But so I paid for it to be professionally photographed, and then I put the listing on Furnish Finder, and I put it on Airbnb. In retrospect, I think I should have just stuck with Airbnb. Airbnb collects fees and stuff. I don't know. I haven't done any actual bookings on Furnish Finder yet, but I have inquiries. The cool thing about Furnish Finder is you have actual leads on there. So if you're open to cold calling people, they'll actually give you people that are looking for housing, and you can talk to them on the phone and try to convince them, hey, you should stay here. But it costs $100 per listing. So if you don't want to spend the $100, then Airbnb works great.
Awesome. And then so that one in New Orleans, those are all travel nurses? It's
actually not. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 in there, but all of them are like professionals, traveling professionals, and it's a normal thing these days where people need to stay somewhere for like a month, 2 months, 3, and that's it. Then they're out. So if you can provide that solution for them and give them a safe place and everything, and really the big thing for me is making sure that this thing looks like a business to the max extent possible. I want it to literally look like a hotel inside of it, so that people don't feel that they can get too, and this is what it is, like you don't want someone to get too comfortable in the common spaces and start neglecting it or something, where they feel like these rooms are huge, so the rooms are big and they feel comfortable in their room, and they don't trash the house. It feels like a business, gets cleaned on a weekly basis. Yard work is taken care of. There's security cameras in the interior, not in the bathrooms obviously or the bedrooms, but in the interior, so I can watch things as far as, let's say someone texts me and then they say, hey, like this person is kind of acting a fool. I can go to the cameras and then look into it and then remove them from the house. But yeah.
Well, so that's something to speak on. Obviously the security, but putting all the systems in place. But there's a book around here somewhere. It's called Broken Window, Broken Business. And that's kind of leaning on that whole idea of the fact that the book was talking about if somebody walks up to your business and there's a broken window, or there's a leaky faucet, or the carpet's dirty, or the walls are busted up, people assume that you don't take care of your stuff and thus they don't care to take care of your stuff. But if you show always that you're constantly taking care of your things and things look nice, he's got his property down there dressed up looking like a hotel. And so people assume you care and then they actually take more care of it for you. And so again, with all of your properties, like if you don't take care of your properties or you don't have standards in place to where they're at where you want them, then people will never go above that. So you have to set the bar. If you want your properties to be nice, well managed, and look nice and stay nice and have your tenants take care of them, then you need to take care of those things. Like the second they call you and something's messed up, you need to follow up and take care of that immediately, because your delay shows that you don't care. Thus, they're going to care less, and then they're probably not even going to report it the next time. And that's where the management is so important. But again, nobody's going to care more than you. And so the higher you set your bar, the higher your property will be taken care of in the long run. So I think that's a great point.
That's so true, man.
Yeah,
that's so true. Everything you just said there. Perfect.
It's insane. All right, and so Joe, like now you've kind of cracked this, per room thing. So you bought this big old house. Obviously, do you think it could work on a smaller scale, like a 3 or 4 bedroom in a place that's mostly midterms that you're looking at?
I've heard like 3 bedroom wouldn't work for it, but I don't see why not. As long as you keep that bathroom count high, and you should be good. Just try to. This house, we got lucky on it in a lot of different ways. I mean, it was a duplex converted into a single family, so there's like it's very open. Mm-hmm. It's like the hallways are really wide. You don't have to, when you're like really close counters with people, you kind of have to analyze these properties a lot. You should look for these ginormous houses because normal people are not going to rent them.
Yeah.
So,
and that was something that we were looking for specifically, and that's why 3-1 isn't good for like the house hacking model when you're doing per room, because you need the house to be laid out and you need to look through that lens of, are these people going to feel comfortable and feel like they can go to a safe place without being overcrowded all the time. And that's why having, like, to me, a 1-to-1 bed to bath, like that way, if every single tenant can have their own individual bathroom, that's a win from the jump. Like you get a 3-bed, 3-bath, like massive 2-bed, 2-bath. It's not ideal because it won't cash flow as high, but the price point will probably be a little lower. But the closer you can get to a 1-bed to 1-bath each, they'll have their own private area.
And I'd like to add that too. I mean, like I ultimately I had 2 properties I went down there and looked at. One was like really cool. It was like it had its own like design style. They themed it out. It was really beautiful. But it was kind of in the hood. But it was 1 bedroom, 1 bath per the house, 4-4. Mm-hmm. And I was really leaning towards that one, but ultimately I decided on safety. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, that comes back to your golden neighborhood criteria. So see, that's a guiding light. I'm serious. Like, I know, and I'm guilty of this. I hear everyone talks about good neighborhood, getting a good neighborhood, but like, you always battle with that back and forth because when you go to look at these prices, they're always priced higher, and then you're like, oh, well, I can't afford that. But the question needs to be, how can you afford that? Because you don't want to buy cheap in a bad neighborhood because it's never going to turn out the way you want it to. And so, going back to this, if somebody wanted to get into this, Joe, I mean, we've kind of given a dozen ways, but like, how else could they get into a per room type of model? Would you recommend starting with the arbitrage or?
If you are like looking for an apartment, you could try to talk to your landlord and see if they're okay with subletting. But I honestly would not start with rental arbitrage. Mm-hmm. I would not. I would see unless you have to. Like if you feel like it's going to take you a long time to get a down payment, then I would. But if you think that you can get one fairly quickly, at least in like a year, you should wait. And I would say a down payment being at least $40,000. Unless you're doing a FHA loan, then you can probably you can get away with a lot less. Okay. Yeah, in this market too, you can ask for closing assistance. So I mean, really, if you get with an FHA loan, you only need. I would drop it down dramatically. I was thinking conventional. Like you would only need maybe I'd say $15K to be good. So
that's perfect. Yeah, and I think if you're trying to get into investments, like we all want to get into a property with zero down, and there are ways. But if you want to do it right and not have to jump through any hoops and just go straight into it, the FHA is probably the best bet.
I will say this about rental arbitrage. This was a very risky thing that I took part in, and I'm really happy it's working right now. But dude,
but we'll see.
I'm on the phone every day right now.
Yeah,
like one of the tenants has decided to take the role of the manager of the property, and I've probably talked to her about 10 hours so far, like legit, like 10 hours on the phone, like, and we've got like things written out, and the lease is written a certain way with her where we're going to drop it down to $500 at some point. In 60 days, we're going to have a recap and see how she's doing, and then drop it down to 500. She literally works for me now, and she's going to be at the property for 5 months, but her job is to maintain the cleanliness of it. She's possibly going to be a co-host, which they do that on Airbnb. You can co-host. So you can get a co-host, or you can do that as a job too, co-host, which will give you that property management experience as well. Yeah. But yeah, she's doing a lot of stuff for me right now.
That's crazy. So. Well, you got lucky there. Now you got now you got a partner down there living in the property. Yeah. That's phenomenal. Okay. Yeah. So, but all that happened because he took the leap, and so it all kind of works out again. Like I feel like we started out with him buying the duplex. Like it's just that mindset. Like you really need to be willing to jump into the unknown. If you want to get into investing, there's no perfect model. Like you can make any model work for you and become successful as long as you put in the effort and time. He's been talking to this one girl for 10 hours just to make this property work.
She's really cool.
Yeah.
If you watch this, I love you, Lindsay. You're awesome. You're awesome.
Shout out to Lindsay.
Yeah.
So,
Lindsay Thompson.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Joe, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you about how to do this or like to pick your brain on they wanted to get into this, how could they reach out to you?
At the end of the video, I mean, you can look me up on Instagram, dreamprojectz, so DREAM projects with a Z at the end, and YouTube, Joe Snyder Real Estate. So just stick with Instagram, and I'll get back to you on there.
Perfect. Okay, and then we like to finish out. Are there any books that you would recommend them checking into?
Yeah, so I brought this book with me because it's not very well known. It's called Wealth Secrets You Must Know Before You're 40. And when I got out of the military in March, I knew that I was financially independent, and I didn't really think I needed to work. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna chill. And I got really depressed because I wasn't working. And one of this book, I was reading another book and it recommended this one, and I ordered it. And this book is awesome. It actually references the Bible a lot, but it's kind of a blueprint on how to be successful in general as far as money goes. And one of the things that stuck with me is in life, God, if you're not religious, it is what it is, but God says in the Bible, God's talking to one of his apostles or prophets. It's in the book.
Yeah.
It says in life you have two choices: to prosper or perish. Like you have no choice. If you don't do anything, you're going to perish. Like you might as well try to prosper, because otherwise life is going to suck. You got two choices. You get to decide. Do you want to have a good life, or do you want to have a life where you're going to look back or something? You might as well just try to prosper. God's going to help you along the way too, as long as you try. Unless you're leading with your heart, and you're like leading with love and you're trying to be a good person, God wants you to be rich. So get back,
I've never read that book, but I have that thought almost on a daily, which I think is very interesting. You bring that up. It's more of like I have a constant discussion with myself whenever I'm about to start the next task. It's like, it's going to suck anyway, no matter what I'm doing. Like whether I'm working on whatever I'm working on, I've got to work in order to survive. So you can choose what you work on, and then ultimately that'll get you where you want to go, instead of like working on a bunch of different things. But anyway, so for me, I think it brings me some calmness knowing that I'm going to be in a state of suck for a certain amount of time every single day, but you can choose what you're doing in that time of suck.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it's vague, but like that's really where you can decide your future. Because if you decide or just submit to doing something else that you don't really enjoy, well, you could sit in that forever, or you can go through the same amount of suck doing what you do enjoy. And it's that discomfort of switching these things that a lot of people get hung up on because you lose the security. But I've changed my job a dozen times, and but it's ultimately just really what you care to do in the future. And so it's going to suck no matter what, but you could choose what you go through. Okay.
A recommendation on here?
Yeah.
One thing I would recommend for people to do in general, because prosper and perish, means it could be a philosophical conversation in general. I recommend that you you take note of the momentum that you have going on in your life, whether that's like you have to be somewhere at a certain time or the boss wants you to be there at 6 a.m. or whatever, and you're stressed out, and try to at least take a Sunday off and sit down and meditate and just let your thoughts come in and just analyze them, and then maybe you can like really pick up on things that might be causing you to feel negative or something of that nature. Because once you start acting positive, like bringing in positive influences and doing positive habits, this kind of stuff's going to make a lot more sense, where you're just like, okay, like I want to be wealthy. Okay, well now, I drink alcohol way too much at night. Why am I doing that? Why am I talking crap on people when they're not around? You start to pick up on these things and you start removing them, you're going to be in a better mood. And God's going to give you the things like laws of attraction play into that role. Like you're going to stop attracting negative things in your life and start attracting positive things. And as if you want the goal of being rich, or whatever your goal is, to be the best singer or whatever it is, or best at your job that you have right now, or if you do, then that will transpire for you. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and that's powerful. I support that. And so, y'all, so to wrap this up, so we already have the contact. If you want to reach out to Joe, you can reach him there on Instagram, dreamprojectz with a Z. And then if you are interested in getting into large multifamily, apartment syndications, anything to do with large multifamily, reach out to me. All my contact links are on raisingcapitalrealty.com, and you can reach me there, or on Instagram, I am Austin Mitchell. But anyway, Joe, I really appreciate your time, man. This has been awesome. The concept of rent per room is exciting.
Yeah.
And I think I'll have to give that a try in the future. But I appreciate it, and we'll have you back soon, okay?
Yeah, bro.